Hey everybody, this is Clinton Tremelli presenting my capstone presentation. Title of mine was a comparative analysis of motivational factors in Division One and Division Two student athletes, more specifically college basketball players, for PE 589, physical education, and exercise science capstone, taught by Angela Robles, spring of 2019. I really wanted to see what motivated athletes to be committed to their sport. Like I said, specifically men's basketball players at the collegiate level, Division One and Two. The interest kind of came from the coaching side. Uh, since I'm a coach, I kind of wanted to understand what motivates athletes to compete and succeed over time and at such a high level. The purpose of the study was to find out what motivates Division One and Division Two athletes to stay committed to their sport. Use the Sports Motivational Scale (SMS2). The research questions that were asked were: what are motivational factors for Division One college athletes, specifically basketball players? What are motivational factors for NCAA Division Two collegiate basketball players? And what are the overarching themes of motivation that make athletes committed to their sport based on the SMS2 scale? The first article I looked at was title was Sport Commitment Over Time in Collegiate Athletics. It was written by a professor, an unpublished master's thesis from the California State Fullerton. The purpose of the study was to evaluate athletes' commitment using the sport commitment model and investment model. The participants were men and women athletes from the cross-country team at Cal State Fullerton in Southern California. The procedure, they were surveyed 3 different times: one before the season, one during the season, and one just following the season. And the results validated the first hypothesis in that enjoyment and opportunity lead to greater sports commitment, which kind of makes sense because the more you enjoy something, the more you have passion for, the more you're going to want to do it. I kind of relate that to all of us with our jobs, with our schooling, and therefore the application relationships between coaches and players can change the amount of motivation and drive athletes to stay committed to their sport. Obviously, if you enjoy the athletes that you compete with, enjoy the coaches that coach you and push you to be great, you're going to want to stay committed and you're going to want to keep doing that sport. One of the other articles I wanted to touch on was parallels between coping and motivation. It was from the Journal of Sport and Exercise Psychology. It was written in 2008. The purpose was to analyze 2 different dimensions and how it affects motivation, coping, goal attainment, as well as life satisfaction during a sports competition. The participants were French-Canadian athletes. They surveyed 186 of them. 106 were male, 80 were female, and the ages ranged from adolescents from 14-year-old to grown adults at 28 years old. The procedure was kind of a 2-step process. The first questionnaire package was given during the last training before competition, prior to the season, and then the second questionnaire was given during the first training following competition. The results showed perfectionism dimensions correlate with motivational orientations and that coping mechanisms relate to goals and adjustments of athletes. The application of this that I took from this article review was kind of understanding the relationships and combination of both motivating factors and coping mechanisms to assist coaches when managing and working with their athletes. Obviously, coaching it's huge that you're able to motivate your athletes to want to play for something bigger than themselves and have a great relationship with them. So I think this kind of goes hand in hand with that. The third article I wanted to touch on was the sports motivation scale that was used in this for my research. This was from the Psychology of Sport and Exercise, and the purpose is to create and validate a revised version of the scale. Study 1, the participants in Study 1 were 412 Canadian adult athletes. Study 2 had 290 Canadian youth basketball players and swimmers. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an Americanized one, but this will do for now. Study one recruited by word of mouth and web forums, and it was completed. The questionnaires were completed online. Study two was given anonymously during breaks at a championship site. The results showed that in study one, new integrated subscales and modified intrinsic motivation scaling supported, validated the comparison of the old SMS scale. And then study two found that with an independent sample of the SMS2, it was still supported and worked out well or better than the original SMS scale. So in theory, the SMS2 scale was much more better and much more effective than the first scale. The application I took from this was the tool used to research motivation of our athletes in our study. It helps us identify themes, motivational techniques for coaches to assist their athletes, and went directly hand in hand with my research ideas and projects. The methodology of my research, the procedure was approved by Angela, and I talked to both my former boss and both of my former bosses now, Coach Paul Trevor at Cal State Stanislaus, and then Coach Eric Musselman at Nevada, and asked if I could reach out to their athletes, and they obviously said yes because I have previous relationships with them, and they know me on a first basis. The athletes were given a consent form and the motivational factor survey. The survey was supposed to take about 25 minutes, and it took about 20. At the end of March, I drove down to Cal State Stanislaus and gave the survey in person. Some people it took 10 minutes, some people it took 20. And then the following day when I was back in Nevada, I gave it to the 7 of our players there. The participants were male college athletes, Division I and Division II college basketball players. They ranged from 19 to 24. The method was quantitative survey, providing descriptive statistics, and then a qualitative questionnaire at the end that had 4 open-ended questions. The demographics were 6 questions. The SMS scale that I spoke about earlier had 18 Likert scale statements, and then the open-ended, like I just said, was a 4-question qualitative questionnaire at the end that was completed. The results from these surveys. The research showed that there really wasn't a significant difference in motivational factors between Division I and Division II players in the study. The highest ranking reason for sport participation was because participating in sport is an integral part of my life. So most athletes growing up, that's all they knew. Like from age 5, 10, whenever they started, it was a huge part of their life. So that's still why they continue to play. I know after guys get done playing, they kind of struggle with their identity, just for the sole fact that they played sports their whole life and now it's over. What are they supposed to do? Respondents conveyed that they played because they wanted to be the best as well. The lowest ranking statement was regarding participants playing, so others will praise me for what I do. I find that to be a little enlightening because I'm glad that at least the 17 athletes that I surveyed weren't trying to impress anybody or get praised for that. Despite a diversity in participant responses, most players shared a consensus that were motivated from coaches, teammates, family, and friends. I thought that was an interesting point where most do not admit to playing for praising by others, but they are motivated by others. So I found that to be a little surprising, but I mean, I think in the larger scale, we kind of do things for others, not to get praised, like I said, but for the sole fact that we want to make them proud. The discussion, the supportive part, play to be the best. Obviously, many players interviewed in this study claimed they liked having the competition and strove to be the best among only opponents, but also their teammates. I guess that's alpha dog in most of these men trying to be the best. But I found that to be, I mean, I approved of it just because I think life's a competition and their teammates we want to be the best. I mean, you sit out in the professional world, no matter what we do, we should try to strive to be the best. Most players did admit, if not all, their motivation was to play for their family, friends, fans, and etc. Many players felt obligated to play just because of the integral part of their life. Like I stated in previously, coaches play a critical role in the team success rate. It's been studied thoroughly. However, whether or not a team is successful as a whole because of the coach-player experience is debatable. Um, Obviously, coaching plays a part. You can have a great relationship with your coach, but it doesn't mean you guys are going to be successful on the court. Non-supportive. Many previous studies have argued that when competition increases, enjoyment decreases. I found that to be invalid in this substance based on the surveys that I gave to these athletes because they love the competition part of it. Future research furthering this study, it should be suggested that researchers consider where the motivation stemmed from and explore both the culture and the age. Obviously, each generation is different, so maybe diving into that a little bit different. Maybe the Michael Jordan era, now the LeBron James, Kevin Durant era, compared to what the era we are with college athletes and even high school athletes. A person has to want to play basketball in order to feel the necessary power in order for them to get a leg up on those who have to play. The want to compared to the have to. Players have said they played because they were hyphenate versus externally motivated when surveyed again. It'd be interesting to examine which players continue furthering their athletic career and which players chose to leave it behind. Maybe dive into the monetary side of things and if that motivates players, especially at the Division I level. And then maybe some detailed background data would need to be collected and emphasized in order to fully understand player motivation. Probably have to go more in depth. Probably has to be a longer process, maybe over a whole season, maybe over a 4-year career at college, or maybe from high school through college, depending on that. And then references. Obviously, we all had 15 of them. The ones I found most helpful were the 3 that I spoke about. Let me go back to them. The sport commitment over time and collegiate athletes. Parallels between coping and motivation. And the sports motivation scale were kind of the 3 that I leaned on the most throughout this process. I look forward to listening to your guys's and hope you guys enjoyed mine.